Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 320 of the Canadian Football Countdown, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network and the Alternative Football Network. Happy New Year, everybody. We're back for the first time here in 2026. Ryan and Adam here with special guest Andrew from the Turf District for a Edmonton Elks 2025 CFL season deep dive. It might be the year 2026, but we're not done looking back at the year 2025. So we're here to talk everything Edmonton Elks here tonight. Should be a fun one. We're going to dive into preseason expectations, major storylines throughout the season. We'll dip into a little bit of the offseason stuff that's happened so far, / what might be to come for the team. And we're going to have a grand old time doing so. First up, Adam, how are you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing good, Ryan. Just, hanging out on the farm, trying to get some things done around the place and doing whatever it has to be done. I mean, mainly it's with the cows right now. And what it is with the cows, it's at work or doing whatever. Christmas is officially definitely over and New Year's is definitely over. So, yeah, it's time to move on to 2026. But, yeah, kind of cool to take a brief look back at 2025. Yeah, that's what I've got going on. You?
Not too much. Just, again, holiday stuff is all out of the way. It's a busy time of year for myself, as I'm sure it is for everyone. And now we're a month away from CFL free agency, and we're still trying to dive deep into all of these teams from the 2025 season. So we've got a couple more of these to go, hoping to schedule some more over the coming weeks. And then we'll start looking ahead to 2026 here on the podcast as well. I mentioned it already. Joining us tonight, our special guest from the Turf District podcast. It's great, Andrew Hoskins. Andrew, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and Happy New Year, gents. Thanks for having me back on the podcast to talk football. I'm starting to get geared back up, and I've been on a couple of shows recently, and ours fires up January 27th. And so, you take that break, and it's great. You have the holiday and all those types of things, and you get a little time to kind of shut your brain down, and then you realize, I miss talking football, so it's time to get back in and get after it.
Absolutely. If you missed the last episode, I believe it was right before the holidays, right before the New Year's, that Trey and I chatted about the top 10 CFL stories from 2025. Had a good time chatting through many major stories from around the league there, so go back and check that out if you haven't done so already. Let me get the rest of the housekeeping out of the way, and then we'll do that deep dive into the Elks here. The Canadian Football Countdown is brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Game Time TV. You can learn more at GameTimeTV.ca or at Facebook.com/GameTimeTVMB. As always, we do want to acknowledge that the Canadian Football Countdown is brought to you from Treaty 1 territory, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples in the homeland of the Métis Nation, as well as from the Treaty 4 territory, traditional territory of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis Nation. And also, if you're looking for additional content in between our weekly episodes, check out the link to our Discord community. It's free to join. It's in the episode description. You can watch Adam post every single piece of news that he finds across the various social media related to the CFL throughout the offseason. Adam has been a busy man, keeping us all up to date on everything going on there, and I know that helps me keep tabs on things during the bellows of the off season when I might be not as actively scrolling through social media myself.
Are you sure that it's Adam that's doing that and not the cows? Just curious.
Like it might be
the amounts that posted. Sometimes it could be either. It's hard to say. So
that's what I was thinking. Yeah, I was pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you never know. Adam's training the next crop. There we go.
Awesome.
It's perfect.
Go check out the Discord. Yeah, what can I say? The Semitoles like spreading the news.
Yeah, that's the next part, that there's going to have a section right in Mosaic there for the cows to come in, make sure that they get all the latest game news, right? Like, that would tell me that's not on brand somehow. Come on, that's great. It's hilarious.
Hey, definitely it'll be a great movement.
Okay.
You know what? Well done.
Well done. I'll stop.
That was a slow clap moment. That was outstanding. Outstanding.
Really starting off the year strong, Adam. Well done. All right, let's get into talking about the Edmonton Elks 2025 season here. Coming into 2025, they come off of a 7-11 record in 2024, and they exit the year 2025 with a 7-11 record once again. This year, finishing 5th in the West Division. Got lots of storylines to talk about. Very interesting season, as it usually is with this football club. But I think the best place to start is, how were we feeling about the team coming into this year, given some of the changes made in the offseason heading in, how the previous year ended off? Andrew, what were your expectations for the team coming into this past year?
I think there was I mean, every year there's a lot of excitement when our teams are coming into training camp for sure, but I think there was a lot of big name signings on that defensive side of the ball. When you look at guys like Robbie Smith and Jake Seresna and Jared Brinkman and Royce Metier, big names that were coming in as part of kind of a revamp to that defense, especially on the defensive line. And I think that realistically, I was looking at it as, well, this is an entirely new coaching staff. I mean, Jordan Maximic has been in the offensive coordinator role. And so him coming in as the offensive coordinator, he was the only one that was kind of in the spot that he normally would be or has been in the past. Mark Killam coming in as head coach. Demetrius Maxey was coming in as the special teams coordinator, but truly running the defensive line, and Mark Killam running the special teams. And then, of course, JC Sherritt making his triumphant return to Edmonton now as the defensive coordinator. So I knew that there was going to be some growing pains as they kind of figured out, who's going to do what in this coaching staff, who's going to, who are going to be those leaders, especially when you bring in all of those kind of big names. Who is that leader, right? And I think there was a lot of excitement around, Trey Ford starting the season as the starter. And I remember talking to Ed Hervey early on, and him saying that, he's a young quarterback. We're going to give him some time, and that's why the defense is stocked up, so that the defense will keep them in games, and they can find a way to let Trey kind of work his magic, shall we say, into getting to those wins. And obviously, as the season started, that isn't exactly how it went, but I think there was that level of, okay, they're Justin Rankin now coming in as a second full year. Everyone was really excited to see Trey Ford in a starting role. The offensive line had basically stayed together from the year before, and now we have some improvements on defense. So all good things, right? Like this should pan out to although I think at the beginning of the season, I was looking at, I could see them, I had them finishing with 8 wins. Like, I thought if we landed in a 500 season, I thought that would be an exceptional jump for this team, just because there was so much change. And like you said, 7-11 in 2024, 7-11 in 2025, but majority of that coming towards the end of the season, that we'll talk about more in a second. But I think that it wasn't far off. I think it was a little bit under what we expected from them, but I think that it's about right when you have this massive amount of changes when people are coming in.
Adam, what about you? What were your expectations for the team?
Well, I expected the Edmonton Elks to be a little bit better, I think, than they were going in to 2025. I thought that, Trey Ford took some big steps ahead in 2024 at the end of that season. And I thought, this should be a team that should be competitive in the West, especially with all the changes that they made. I thought that they had probably one of the best looking defenses on paper out of all the teams. The offensive line still scared me a little bit, and the reason being was there was no real upgrades to that offensive line. It was mostly stay with the status quo. But I was excited to see what Mark Killam can do as a first-year head coach, And I thought, the Edmonton Elks, this could be a team that's either going to be right on the edge of playing in the playoffs or going to finally take the jump and they're going to make a playoff game, is where I had them at the beginning of the season. Just depending exactly what was going to go on. And the big question mark was the quarterback. But that being said, I knew that they had a very good backup in place in Cody Fajardo when they made that trade earlier in the offseason. So overall, I was pretty excited for the Edmonton Elks going into this season.
Yeah, I had hope for them as well based on the additions they made in the offseason and also the narrative the last couple of years being like, maybe if you finally give the ball to Trey Ford, look, you play exciting football and he rallies down the stretch. And now Trey Ford finally gets the ball to start the season. There was some hope there. I do think I still had them finishing. No, I think I did have them finishing third or fourth in the West. I can't remember so I did expect them to make that jump to some degree, but also part of me in the back of my mind, I have in past years been very hopeful on the Elks and been disappointed in them. So I was a little bit hesitant with that prognostication there, but I the same thing with the defense. Love the additions on the defense. Anytime those happen, you expect it to take a little bit of time to gel, and there's a lot of pieces brought in. So I think that was kind of part of my perception early season as well, that they might get to where the talent they brought in is later in the season. We're going to dive into some of those topics here now, but we have to start at the quarterback situation, I think, because that was the biggest storyline coming into the year. Again, the Elks committing to Trey Ford as the starter. They give him the 3-year contract. They say he is going to be our starter this year. They trade for Cody Fajardo to be his backup, veteran presence, but clear that he's going to be the backup. But everybody, I think, in the back of their minds had it playing a little bit when you have a quarterback in Fajardo who essentially, if he hadn't gotten injured the year before, probably was on track to win MOP or be in the running for it in his time in Montreal. You have to think, what is the leash going to be like on Trey Ford? He ends up struggling early on in the season. The Elks fall 1-6 start to the season, I believe it was in total. And after just 5 starts, Trey Ford gets pulled. And in week 8, we're looking at Cody Fajardo taking over as the starter for the rest of the year. Andrew, what did you make of that whole situation with the quarterbacks this year?
Well, I think, like you said, there was a lot of people who had said, let Trey Ford play, let him run it. And when Jordan Maximic came in, we thought, okay, here's a guy who has worked with mobile quarterbacks before, and finding ways for them to be creative and find their way down the field, and yet it just didn't click. It just didn't work, and it seemed to me that there were times where Trey looked brilliant. But it really did look like a lot of the times when he was brilliant, it was like sandlot football, right? It's like, okay, let's just draw it up on here. Oh, okay, I'm going to roll out to the right and run 30 yards to the right, and then I'm going to bomb it down the field, and hopefully you'll catch it. Like it was, there was a lot of I think in the Jordan Maximic system, there just needed to be a little more accuracy, and that's not. Trey is exciting to watch, and but he's just not quite there with that yet. But the other thing that I kind of saw was, I think Mark Killam, Jordan Maximic, Ed Hervey were watching on to see, okay, we're handing you the reins. How are you going to take on this leadership role? Because we're happy to make you the face of the franchise. Like, you're a Canadian kid who's got a lot of talent. We want to, let you thrive here in Edmonton. I don't know that the leadership was there. And you saw it with some guys where he was definitely, kind of closer to them is what I'm going to use as an example. But I do think that it was more, I do think overall it was the leadership side that they were missing, where they just couldn't. He's been around where all of it has been bad, unfortunately, and so it's pretty easy to get back into that. Oh, here we go again. and then not be able to drag them back out. And I think that's what Cody Fajardo did, and that's why he ended up staying as the starter.
Yeah, I'm with you on a lot of what you said there with Trey Ford. I thought, yeah, Jordan Maximick's offense, after what he did with the passing game with VA, with Nathan Rourke over in BC, he's one of my favorite offensive coordinators out there. Thought maybe he can help Trey Ford take it to the next level of, Ford at times over the last couple of seasons showed that he had some passing ability in there.
Yeah.
It was just the consistency nature. So hoping he grew into more of that stable passer there. And that just didn't happen early in this season. I think part of that also is on the receiving core as well. I think the depth of the receiving core coming into the year, we were all talking about, this team isn't as deep. They lost guys like Eugene Lewis, who went over to Ottawa this year, right? And you look at it at year's end, the receiving core finished, their leading receiver, Keon Julian Grant, finished with 820 yards, which was good for 20th in the CFL in receiving yards. In a 9-team league, to have your leading receiver be 20th in the league in receiving yards is definitely a concern. And mixing the inaccuracies, the inconsistencies of the quarterback with perhaps a lack of depth at wide receiver, I think was just a mixed match of that things that didn't work. And to me, that's where when Cody Fajardo came in, he is known as being this accurate passer. He's able to place the ball a little more precisely and have a little bit more success on offense. He's that stable presence there. They ended up finishing the year with only 10 interceptions thrown on the season, which is best in the CFL. And so I think just that calming, accurate presence of Cody Fajardo is what really made the difference there to settle things down. Adam, what did you see from Trey Ford and then the switch to Cody Fajardo?
I thought it was actually probably due. I mean, Trey Ford just came up. It did not look right. You're right, Ryan. I think it was partly because he did not have the receivers that he really needed to kind of succeed right off the bat. The play calls were mostly based on Trey Ford run first and then maybe worry about a play second, which is to his strength a little bit, but not all the time. And when a quarterback is always getting out of the pocket, eventually that leads to tendencies as far as I'm concerned. And that's where they caught Trey Ford, essentially always running out of the field. He kind of reminded me a little bit of Caleb Williams this last week. Caleb Williams, in a lot of times, was running for his life. The difference is Caleb Williams had the receiver to go and make that catch. I don't know if Trey Ford had that receiver to make that catch. So it was a little bit unfair for him, but in another way, you know what? Football's not really a fair thing sometimes. Cody Fajardo came in. He did what he had to do. And honestly, I thought Fajardo did actually very admirably for the Edmonton Elks at the end of the, middle and end of the season. So overall, I hope Trey Ford gets another shot. I don't know if it's going to be in Edmonton. We'll talk about maybe that later on a little bit more. But you know what? We'll see what happens with him. He's still a good young quarterback as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, Adam, I won't disagree with you on that, and the fact that he does have talent there. There's definitely raw talent. Did the receivers make it easier? Not entirely. But did Trey make it easier for them as well? And what I can say is having watched all the games and the games live, there was a lot of overthrows, a lot of I'm running out to the left, and then the guy's wide open, but like he's done all of his work, but the ball is nowhere near where he can catch it, and so that. So I do think that there was and that's why when you see Cody Fajardo come in, now he had to, build up rapport with guys like Dunbar and he already had the rapport with Keon Julian Grant, but Curly Gittins Jr. he needed to build up on. And then of course we had this rotation where we've got Hilaire coming in because of injuries and all of this type of thing. I just think that because he's a veteran, and because he has seen so many more defenses, that he was able to build that rapport with the receivers a lot faster and be able to make that happen so that when they made that move, the ball was there, right? So I do think that played into it a little bit too.
The thing that shocked me the most of the Trey Ford experience at the start of the season is we talk about that run first mentality. He only had 16 carries on the year in 5 games. So even it seemed the running ability wasn't used to his maximum. If you have a guy at quarterback that can run as effectively as he can, but struggles with the passing game, like I'm running with them more often than not. All you need to do is throw 3 passes to win a football game. Chris Streveler showed that this year.
So I don't know, honestly, behind the scenes or anything like that, but I just wonder if there was a little bit of, I'm going to throw it. I need to prove that I can throw the ball.
Sure, yeah.
Because I don't know if he was specifically told, you need to not run as much, or if it was just like, hey, the green light is there if it's open, but he was determined to show that he can be a passer as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, everyone knows he can run. So the other part that I found, and this was very early on, the other teams knew how, the defenses knew how to shut him down, and he didn't know how to work around that, right? That linebacker spy, or that defensive back spy, so he couldn't run. Like, there was always somebody standing right there, and I do think that made a difference, him not being able to adjust to that side, and then the early defensive struggles didn't help either. On not doesn't let me rephrase that. It doesn't hurt Trey Ford, but it didn't help him to be able to have that success.
Oh, yeah, it puts you in that situation where now you have to start forcing it a little bit, which if you're developing as a passer is not going to help you go through the reads you need to go through. And that leads to some of those fun magician-like plays that we all like to see on the highlight reels, but that also leads to some of the overthrows and the poor timed throws that we have seen. We talked about Cody Fajardo comes in and he kind of stabilizes the team. He doesn't light it up necessarily offensively. He played the bulk of the season as the starter. He got 13 starts to Trey Ford's 5. And in most offensive categories, the Elks are finishing the year last or second last in a lot of them. Points per game, only 23.4. Rushing yards per game, under 100. Passing yards per game, 244, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not that Fajardo came in and lit it up. He brought that stabilizing presence. I think that did help the defense out as well, having him in there, and maybe just extending a couple more drives gives the defense a little bit more of a break. But what also happened offensively, I think around the same time Fajardo came in, is the Elks kind of finally woke up a little bit and realized, hey, here's the most talented player we have on this offense. Let's start utilizing the heck out of him. And that was Justin Rankin, who some weeks early in the season had, 3 or 4 carries only. Yep. I think he had at least 1 or 2 games of negative fantasy points in there in the middle. And then he just started exploding. He goes on to be the team's MOP nominee, finishes the year over 1,000 yards on the ground, over 1,700 yards in total. What did you see from Justin Rankin in his usage this season, Andrew?
Oh, I think you hit the nail right on the head there, and the fact that they didn't use him often enough, early enough, and I think there was it made it harder. Now, I do think that the adjustments on the offensive line, you bring in David Beard, who is an all-star at center, but Mark Cordy needing to kick over to that left guard spot, and then bringing in McGregor to play on the right-hand guard spot, and then the injury to Martez Ivy, it definitely made it so that running was not really a great option for this team, no matter who it was, whether it was Trey, whether it was Justin Rankin. There just really wasn't that ability. As the season went on, and particularly after they brought in Carter O'Donnell, you could really see Rankin, he when he would break to the side and the block was there for him, he could be gone on every play. But getting him the hole was the harder was the harder part for him to run through. And once they started to figure that out and get a little more balance, you saw a lot more of Justin Rankin. And of course, he's spectacular to watch. He's one of those guys that as you watch him run, and I'm not saying he's the same, but similar. I remember when I was a kid and I was watching Gizmo, and he'd start running, and you'd just be like, how does a human run that fast? And then all of us, like, he just bounces through people and away he goes. And that is pretty much where you see Justin Rankin this year. He'd bounce off a few guys, drag a few guys with him, shake them off, and then take off down the field. And that to me made definitely the highlight of the year.
And he finished third on the team in receiving yards on the season on top of that as well, right? We're seeing more and more of that in the modern day of the CFL, of the running backs being used as receivers. Why not this year, but the year before, that was the Walter Fletcher role in Montreal. We've seen, Butler, Bell, Oliveira, all of these guys this year similarly just racking up the catches, and Rankin was making the most of those. Adam, I know you had Rankin on your fantasy team at one point this season. You traded him to me down the stretch, helped me take home the trophy there. So thank you for your contributions. But what did you like from what you saw from him this year?
Yeah, I deserve that. No, honestly, Andrew hit the nail on the head when he said that he runs, and I never really thought of it that way because, back in the day when you used to study back in the late 90s and watching CFL running backs, he is almost like Gizmo. He would get into that secondary, and if he gets in the secondary, look out because he's going to turn another gear and he's gone. If he could just get past the secondary every time, Gizmo was a very tough guy to take down, and Rankin is the exact same way in that area. I think Rankin might even be a little bit better though with the hands. Honestly, Gizmo was Rankin. I always thought was a really good catcher compared to even to Gizmo. So Edmonton, yeah, they got a really good one there in the running back side of things. But you know what? I even liked it even when they were doing the 1-2 combination when they could with Javon Leake, moving him in there once every so often, because Leake is a little bit different runner than Rankin is. So it worked out good for Edmonton in that case. And you're right, the running out of the backfield, catching some balls, Rankin was really good at that too as well. So
Rankin really excelled at taking that 5-yard catch and making it a 70-yard TD. Like that was one of the things that helped him with his receiving, right? Was catch the 10. He wasn't catching a ton of the 40-yard passes. He was catching the 7-yard dump and then turning it into 25. And that's an ability that is amazing for him on top of his running ability.
Makes it real easy on your quarterback if you can do that. Here, just throw me the ball 5 yards. I'll do the rest.
Yeah, exactly. Great. Yeah, exactly. Hey, I get a passing touchdown out of that. That's great. Yeah.
So, thanks for padding my stats.
That's right.
I'll take you out for dinner.
Fajardo, I was going to say, Fajardo better take him out for dinner. Yeah, well done. Yeah.
I want to get into the thought process throughout the ebbs and the flows of the season, because we've seen a similar trajectory, as I mentioned, for this Elks team over the past couple of years. The slow start to the season, couple games in the middle, maybe the team is turning the corner, and then at the end of the day, falling short, missing the playoffs. This year, yeah, we talked about some hype coming into the year, some expectations, middle to higher. Start with a 3-game losing streak to start the year. They do get that win over Ottawa in week number 5, then lose the next 3. So we're at a 1-6 start to the season. We talked about the quarterback change coming halfway through there. Then, Fajardo comes in, and when he comes in, those are 2 tough games, Saskatchewan and Hamilton right away, that they lose close games, but there's some hope going on there. And then they win 4 of their next 5. And you know me, anytime the bottom feeder in the league is all of a sudden winning 2 games, I'm claiming they're winning the division, and I'm on the hype train until they lose their next game, and everybody calls me a fool for doing so, and I never learn. Same thing this year. I think I'm like halfway through the season. Elks, they're on fire. This is a new look team. They're going to 2nd in the West, and they finished 5th in the West. So What was your perception watching this team with that slow start and then that middle stretch this season that maybe garnered some hope there, Andrew?
Well, before I say that, can you stop saying that about my team, please? That would be great. I mean, you're right. There's so many years that you're like, this is the Elks year. I think Elks are gonna. Okay, can you predict them to be in 5th next year? Because that might help. It might help us.
I do take bribes.
Okay, perfect. I will. It checks in the mail. But I do think that
I've tried it with I've tried that with Calgary for many years. Unfortunately, they do good then when I do that. So
that's fair. So I think at the beginning of the season, the real letdown as fans was that the defense was so poor. They were giving up over 30 points a game. They were they were just struggling to find the right coverage and find the right guys in the right spot, and them just being able to what's the right word, like, just understand JC Sherritt's system. And I don't think they were playing in it, and they were trying to learn it, but they're learning it on the field. They had a couple of young guys, Chalen Garnes coming in at that Sam linebacker spot. They had Devondrick Bynum in the short side of the field corner, but he then got hurt, and so then they had JJ Ross come in, and he's basically he's had one game under his belt, which is the only reason he wasn't a rookie last year, but for all intents and purposes he's a rookie. And they're trying to make this work, and that front four, the push from that front four, they just couldn't get the push that we expected them to get. And so I think that was the kind of the biggest disappointment to start was, okay, they're really just not able to get that push to pad the offense, right? Like, let the offense learn, but they just weren't doing it. And I think you're right. When the change happened to Cody Fajardo, at this point, we were, as fans, we're all like, well, you got to try something. You can't just assume that it's going to be the same. But it wasn't until kind of that mid-season when the defense started to figure it out, and you started to see some changes. You started to see Joel DeBlanco taking on more of a leadership role from his linebacker position, the will side. And then you can Niles Morgan was still in there at middle linebacker, but then he gets hurt again, and now we've got Brock Mogensen, who is a rookie, coming in, learning the CFL game as well as this particular defensive role, and they just got better and better and better as the season went on. And at the end of the year, I would say that the defense was actually the strength of the team as compared to the beginning of the year. Never in my life thought I would say this, but at the beginning of the season, our strength was special teams. Wait, what? We have special teams? And even then, it was kind of we're not really sure, right? So, yeah, it was there was a lot of ups and downs, like you said, but I think, again, as we kind of get to the later part of the season, the killer was those two walk-off field goals by Toronto and Hamilton back to back. And those are games that they had in hand. And again, it was just that thing where they just didn't know quite how to finish yet. And that was that was basically the stab in the back for this year. But by the end of the year, there was definitely more hope at the end of the year of, okay, the pieces are in play. We have a lot of these young guys that now have, another year a year under their belt, and they're on good contracts, and they understand this system and scheme on both sides of the ball. And so I think the difference between other years, like the 7-11 in 2024, was like, like, we're gonna have to blow this up and start all over again, which they kind of did. And the 7-11 at the end of this year was like, that if it wasn't for the slower start, we would have been in at least a playoff game. And I think there's that, okay, yeah, they got better as the season went on. And other than within the last 2 minutes of any half where they tend to give up a lot of points for some reason, they were definitely better. And so I think there's definitely a bigger feeling of hope at the end of this season compared to the season before.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the Edmonton Elks definitely look like a team that's on the rise again. They were a little bit in 2024, but you're right. This one feels a little bit different, especially the defense has really taken a step ahead. And I think that they're going to be a lot better than they were last year in 2025. The only concern I still have is a little bit with the defensive line. It didn't get a lot of pressure, but hey, that's why we have free agency. That's why we have players develop. So, you know what? I think the Elks will be better in that position as well. Cody Fajardo, I mean, he's now used to what he has with him in Edmonton. He knows what's kind of going to be happening and everything else. That gives him an extra season to kind of adjust. And I think that's going to be a positive going forward for this Edmonton Elk team. So he's got to stop celebrating in Saskatchewan and going and celebrating as hard as he did when they won one game in Regina. I know it was a big one, but come on. And also the other one that's really great is that the Edmonton Elks finally got it off their back this year, and they got the monkey off their back. And you mentioned special teams. I had to say it. They finally got their kickoff return for a touchdown.
It's been
a long time coming.
It's a Christmas miracle.
It is.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty well. But you know what? Honestly, this team does look like that they were building all season. If it wasn't honestly for maybe even a bad half against the BC Lions there in the last game of the season, they had a chance to even possibly make a story run and try to, you know what, at least make it to the dance. That's all you really have to do, and then see what happens. But yeah, you know what? This is a team though that you could just see that there's pieces there and they're starting to build. So we'll see how much Ed Hervey tampers in the early Ed Hervey window, and we'll see how this works out. But yeah, legally now he can do it. So
that's right. Yeah,
not tampering if it's named after you, right? Once it's named after you, then it's legal.
That's right.
One player, and we'll never forget it. So, by the way, hi Odell Williams or Willis. Never mind. Yeah, I know. Now, hey, there we got also that out for the new year. Me screwing up a name. So, anyways, overall, the Elks are building up, and it'll be exciting to see what happens in 2026. But definitely that second half of the season definitely made it so that you get that optimism in Edmonton.
I kind of draw some comparisons between the 2025 Elks and the 2024 Ticats, because they, second half of the season, that was when like Chris Jones came in, you know, paid under the table or whatever you want to call it, not officially paid, but in a consultant role. That defense turned it around in the second half of the season there as well. And suddenly there was a lot of momentum for the Ticats. They missed the playoffs, finished fourth in the East that year. And then coming into 2025, everybody had them kind of up there first or second in the East Division after spending big in free agency. So I do draw some parallels potentially there with, again, this team that seemed to solidify things defensively. They've got their quarterback coming into next year. They know the pieces that they need to tinker with. We'll talk about those here shortly. And then maybe some of that coming off of some of that momentum from this year. Maybe next year is finally the year for this team. And this year was just another one case of, I think too little, too late. You mentioned those heartbreaking losses down the stretch. What would have been with those? What would have been if they could have, played solid football in more than one of their first six games of the season as well. Continually putting them in those positions where they have to win everything down the stretch, I think is tough. So if I have one New Year's wish for the Elks is that please win some games in the first half of the season in 2026. Let's not get back into the same narrative once again this season.
Just they should win their first game of the season. They play the Ottawa Red Blacks. I mean, if you're going to win the first one, here's your chance.
Adam, please don't say that. Please, let's not assume anything. Let's not do that. I don't think that's a good. I feel like that's not a safe choice.
Fast forward to June and Ryan Dinwiddie's running down the sidelines once again.
Oh God, I hate that guy. Anyway, that's no. I would like No, thank you. I'll pass.
Strike that from the record. We will remove that in editing. No, we won't.
Oh, no, you won't. And
No,
that's
we won't.
fine. No, I agree. We need to have the hot start, and I know we'll talk about 2026 in a minute, but I think you're right in the fact that I think going into, we haven't even done free agency yet, but I think going into this year, there will be that expectation that the growth is there and that they're fighting even closer or getting a playoff spot, even if it's a crossover spot. Just make your way into the dance, because we haven't been there in 6 years. So
right. You mentioned the special teams being a bright spot for the team this season. Adam, you talked about finally getting the return touchdown. What else did you see from the special teams this year, Andrew, that you were actually liking this year?
Well, what I will say is that the average return had gone up significantly. You're looking at a 25 between 25 and 30-yard return on average. Javon Leake doing a great job with that. They did bring some other players in there, but the League had most of the carries, and of course, I know you guys are going to laugh at me, but the punting was spectacular. It didn't matter if it was Cody Grace or if it was Jake Julian. It was great punting, and yeah, I love watching Jake Julian punt, and I never ever in my life thought I'd be saying I really like the way that guy punts, but I do. Jake Julian is great, and I look at I guess if you want to look at the whole picture, was our field goal kicking great? Not always. Blanchard really struggled for the first game, but then he went on a long roll, and I know we were looking at it, and you just like his confidence built and built and built. He did get better as the season went on, and yes, he did miss here and there, but again, this is his first full year of kicking. If you go back and look at Sean White's first year of kicking, very similar. And I'm not saying that Blanchard is Sean White. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying that you have to watch for these guys, how they develop, and if there was somebody in the league that you want developing a special teams player, his name is Mark Killam. So I can't, as much as there was some misses in there, I don't think, other than maybe the first game, maybe the third game, he missed ones that were really, really costly. But beyond that, when he missed, it wasn't something that was putting them out of the game. It was, maybe making it a little harder for them, but it wasn't taking them out of the game. And so I think that's actually a step forward for him. And I'm looking forward to, again, with that development and him working under Mark Killam. One of the best kickers ever in the league, Rene Paredes, had Mark Killam as his special teams coordinator for a very long time. And so I think that Blanchard showed a lot of things. The kid's got a massive leg. So if he can just learn that the extra steps of control and in the big game, I think he's got a lot to look forward to too.
And he killed it on the extra points, 39 out of 40. So just score more offensive touchdowns and he's going to have a great day.
We said that all year. That's all we want him kicking is single at point afters. Like, why? We don't have to worry about field goals. Let's just go point after. Guess we'll see what happens once we change the field. See how that happens.
Yeah. As a team that didn't have neither field goal kicking accuracy nor punt distance accuracy, honestly, I was almost envious of Edmonton's punting abilities. I mean, honestly, it was great. I mean, every time was usually a long bomb or a deep play, and it was awesome to watch. And I mean, it gave great field position for the defense to start on. I mean, you weren't having to start on the 40 or the 45 or anything like that. It was always 20, 15-yard line, and yeah, it made games kind of boring for a while because sometimes the offense wouldn't go or whatever. But I mean, like I said, back and forth we go. But in the end, the Elks were gaining points, are gaining up yards just on the kicks alone. So as a team that doesn't have that right now, I kind of am envious of the kicking game of the Edmonton Elks.
Well, the trick will be is Jake Julian back because he is doing a lot of tryouts down south. So, well, again, we'll maybe talk about that more when we talk about this season. But still, I sure hope he's back because, yeah, he's amazing.
Let's talk about most memorable games from 2025. That's always an interesting one to revisit. I can think of a handful that are quite memorable from this season. So I'm interested to know from both of you, and starting with you, Andrew, which one stands out the most to you? Can you pick one?
Oh my. I think now I have a personal connection to this one too, but the game that stands out the most to me was that win in Montreal. I was at the game. Nice. And I thought for sure it was over. And, you know, even because I was meeting Cliffy and Tim after the game. And so I had already, you know, gone back into the, you know, the bowels of Percival Molson to find my way down to meet with them. And they had it on a TV and I watched the winning touchdown from there. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me, because I was basically sitting on the goal line right where the TD happened. And I'm like, does that count? Like, I'm looking around and I'm wearing my Elks gear, and the Montreal guy is like, yeah, well, that I guess you know that'll be it. They win. I'm like, oh no, how many seconds are left on the clock, sir? No, you don't know this team like I do. But that was a memorable game. It was you know, that was Tyrell Ford got his first big interception and touchdown. Of course, Keon Julian Grant, after having dropped the one against Hamilton that would have been the winning touchdown, gets 2 touchdowns in this game, one with in that dying seconds to win the game against his former team. To me, that one stood out as a big game. Beyond that, I can say there's good and bad, I guess, because the other one that kind of stands out for me was that silly Toronto walk-off field goal. It just ticks me off every time I think about it, because it should have gone Edmonton's way, and it definitely did not. So those are some of the big ones that I remember.
Yeah, the two that I remember, the Toronto one, of course, I was watching that one, and I could not believe that last it was a pass interference call or whatever, or lack thereof, that happened. And I was like, what? No way. That clearly, and no, not a chance. So that one was one of them that I remember. And the other one, actually, the next week against the Ticats, I was listening to that game on 880 because I was cutting hay, and I thought the Elks were going to win that one. So I kind of gave up on it. I was like, okay, it's over. All of a sudden, I turn it back on later on, and nope, not a chance. Hamilton somehow pulls it off. So those are the two that I really remember. And again, without those two, Edmonton's a playoff team. So like I said, it just proves Edmonton's real close. And yeah, those are the two memorable ones that I got there, Ryan.
I'll go with the 2 back-to-back against Calgary this year, because this is coming off those first 3 wins where you're starting to get some hope for this team, and then they go into Calgary for Labor Day and a 28-7 disheartening loss for sure in that game. And it's okay, well, how are they going to bounce back now? And Calgary, I think, was still looking pretty strong at that point. And then all of a sudden they come into Calgary the week after, or at home against Calgary, and Justin Rankin runs for over 200 yards in that game, and they pull out the 31-19 win. That was probably one of, if not the most dominant performance of any kind I think I've seen from a player all season long, where Rankin, 16 carries, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. The Stamps, who had been very good against the run up until that point, just had no answer for him on that day. And Well, after doom and gloom from the loss the week before, it was right back on the hype train for the Elks with now 4 wins in 5 games. And then we get into those 2 heartbreaking losses that you just talked about, Adam.
Yeah, so close, right? And we were the same way. It's like, oh, we're maybe turning, and now we have Toronto and Hamilton. Well, I mean, there's good chance there. Like we could be sitting in third after this week. Nope. No, not so much. So but you're right. It was that feeling of, okay, did we turn the corner, right? So.
And then last thing, looking back at 2025, and then we'll touch on 2026 very briefly here. I always like to give a moment to the unsung heroes. We talk about the big names, the offense, defense, special teams. Who that we haven't talked about enough stands out to you from this season that you wanted to talk about, Andrew?
Well, I have a couple of names. One is Cordell Jackson. We haven't mentioned him as much in this show, but he became the leader of this defense, and he plays with a less abandon, which is kind of fun sometimes, as long as you're not getting a penalty for it. But I really think that Cordell Jackson stands out as one of those guys that should be talked about more. He played very, very well. The other one that I don't know. Can I have 3? Is that okay? Can we do that? Okay. Kobe Williams, who is the halfback on the other side. Very, very tough start to the season. Was getting burned all the time. But that second half of the season was unbelievable for him as a halfback. And so I'm going to go both halfbacks as guys that they don't get talked about enough for what they do. They were talking more about Cordell Jackson near the end of the year, but still not a whole bunch on Kobe Williams. And I thought he played outstanding. The last one that I'm going to go with, and it is a guy that was getting some talk about, but is OJ Hilaire. The guy comes in, has never played a CFL game in his life. He's playing multiple positions on Labor Day, and, different positions, and needing to know where he needs to go. And by the end of the season, he's one of the guys that's taking the top off of defenses. And I really liked the way that he progressed as the year went on. And I also think that he's one of those guys, like he's just a character. I know they talk about character guys, but I think he is. He's just one of those guys that wants to perform and learn and do better every game. And we actually saw that happening throughout the end of the season. So those would be the guys that I'd probably go with. If honorable mention, and I wish he would have been able to finish the game or finish the year, is Carter O'Donnell. Him coming in at that right guard spot just absolutely secured the offensive line. And he plays with that nasty that you need to have somebody on the offensive line that has a bit of that nasty, and he does. So I'm looking forward to more from him as well.
Adam, any name to add, or did Andrew take with the ones on your list?
Well, he took OJ Hillier off my list, that's for sure. I thought OJ Hillier was one of the best receivers for the Elks at the end of the season. And if you take a look, I think in the transactions or in what's going to be happening here, I think he made a certain Curly Gittens Jr. maybe become a free agent just because of his play. I think he's going to be the next one that's going to be talked about in Edmonton for a while as a really good receiver. One guy that actually I think stepped into his own this year, and it's I think his second year now, is Joel Blanco. I mean, guys talked about him all season. I know that he was talked about quite a bit because of the linebacking spot he was playing. He had some good special teams moves. He was the leader in the tackles this year. He honestly stepped into his own, and I think he's going to be a very big piece for the Edmonton Elks going forward. So those are the two that I've got, Ryan.
I'm going to give a shout out to Arkell Smith at wide receiver. And I've been harping all season on, I don't think the team had the depth at wide receiver. We talked about some of that rotation between Hillier and Smith and Benjamin Victor and Zach Mathis when he was healthy. And I didn't realize until I actually put our stats package together for this. Like we talked about The receivers maybe not helping the quarterbacks out at time. We talked about some overthrown balls. Arkell Smith caught 88.1% of his passes on the season, 37 of 42 for 402 yards. It was never flashy. He wasn't a flashy player at all, but he did have some big plays. I think a couple in there, at least early on in the season. I remember that, and he made the most of the opportunities. So I know he's a free agent, so I'm interested to see, do they bring him back? Because pairing him with an accurate quarterback, if you can get that second down reliable guy that can get you the yards, maybe that's something he can grow into there as well. He also did help out on kick returns, kind of taking about half as many as Javon Leake and around the same average. And if you can have the same average as Javon Leake, I think you're doing pretty good in that regard as well. So shout out to Arkell Smith and shout out to all the guys that we've talked about here. Also, shout out to Jake Ceresna for getting the team's first interception in week number 6.
Oh, God.
I forgot to throw that out when we were talking about
that kills me. It took a defensive lineman to get that. And we were thinking they would get a ton of picks. And I mean, they got better as the season went on. Don't get me wrong. But, and it's funny, you talk about Arkell Smith. And you're right in the unsung hero part, because he doesn't get mentioned a lot. He's also the guy that takes the most blistering hits. I don't know what it is, but he catches the ball and always gets nailed underneath the helmet, right in the chin, gets back up, doesn't it? Like, it's crazy. That might be the one thing, is that he catches the ball for sure, but he might get killed in these games, because he gets smoked every time he catches the ball. I don't know how it is, his unluckiness on that front.
Yeah, there was a BC Lion, I can't remember his name. Every play he would just get throttled, and it was the same thing. You're right, Smith is always the same way as well.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about the lack of interceptions, it could have been worse. You could be the 2025, 2026 New York Jets, who did not get a single interception the entire NFL regular season.
No, we did get some in the end. It wasn't so bad. I thought, I can't remember where we actually finished in interceptions, but I thought it wasn't too bad.
It was 8.
Oh, tied.
So you weren't last, despite the slow start. You weren't last. In that regard.
Okay. You know what? Hey, we'll take it. We're not last. That's good. That's a step in the right direction from past years.
All right, that's 2025 for the Edmonton Elks. Now let's take a brief look at 2026. Not a ton of free agents on the official CFL free agent list. They've got a couple at various positions. We've talked about the strengths, the weaknesses of the team from this past season. What is the main focus for you for the Elks this offseason, Andrew?
Well, I think they need to, you talked about it a bit already, Adam, is that we really need to work on this defensive line and getting some pressures. Noah Taylor really grew as the season went on, as far as being able to play that rush end spot. But I'm excited to get Noah Curtis back. We missed him all last season because he got injured in the scrimmage at training camp on Fan Day and missed the entire season. But Noah Curtis is a beast up the middle. So I think the priorities go to making sure we can get Jake Ceresna back in green and gold. He is still a free agent. I'm curious as to, I hope that they can finish that, just because he has more ties to Edmonton now, and he did want to come back here. I hope that we can find a way to have him come back. I think there will be some attention put on to some receivers. Ed Hervey is very good at finding receivers. When you think of his first tour in Edmonton, we saw guys like Darrell Walker, Brandon Zylstra, Duke Williams. These guys come out of the woodwork to, Bryant Mitchell, to be able to play. So he does tend to find receivers, but I think there's going to have to be a little bit of attention put there. I also think there's going to have to be some attention put on the offensive line. And when I look at guys like Brett Boyko is getting up there. He's a good leader. He's a good veteran. I can understand that. But he's also getting up there in age. Can we put somebody else that on that right tackle spot? Martez Ivy had a down year last year, as compared to the year before, where I thought that he should have been up for one of the offensive linemen of the year. I'm curious if they try to decide what they're going to do on that left tackle side. If they can give Cody a little more time, we already talked about his accuracy. If they can give him a little more time and they can find a way to open some more holes for Justin Rankin, it helps this team immensely. So I think that's where a lot of the focus is going to be, in a lot of the defensive secondary, your linebackers. They're going with these young guys that are already producing, right? You're obviously not making a change at running back. They may be looking on the special team side, and I hope it's not for a punter, but they may be looking again for a little more guys that can help with some coverage downfield. But I don't think it's the earth-shattering changes that they were making in 2025.
There's a quick question in the chat here for you, Andrew. Do you see Curly Gittens Jr. coming back at wide receiver?
I don't. And it's unfortunate. I like Curly. But I think that he's going to be looking to probably be closer to home. And I do think that Herbie's been pretty clear that he doesn't like to overspend on linebackers and receivers. He said it a number of times. Not to say that Curly isn't worth the money, he is, but I do wonder if he's thinking, okay, I know I can find a different receiver that can fill that role. One thing that I know that Ed will be looking at, though, is that we're losing a Canadian receiver, he's going to want to try and replace it with a Canadian receiver. He is very focused on making sure that we get that extra draft pick by playing a number of Canadians. And last year at one point we had 11 starting Canadians, and these are not like just pushover guys either. These are good players, and so I feel like he's going to be pushing for that once again.
Adam, what about you? Put your GM hat on, put your Ed Hervey hat on, get to the tampering window before Is there going to be a pre-tampering window? Like, if one's illegal, like, does Ed Hervey start a week earlier now? Like, we were talking about pushing the season earlier. Are we pushing free agency negotiations earlier too? What are you doing if you're Ed Hervey?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, they used to have the pre-practice roster when it was Chris Jones in Saskatchewan, so why not have a pre-negotiation window for the tampering window? I guess it makes sense. But if I'm Ed Hervey, I'm looking for two real spots. Andrew nailed both of them. The defensive line, I think, needs a little bit of improvement in Edmonton. It just didn't really have the amount of pressures, the amount of forces, turnovers, that kind of thing that it really should have had. Teams were still trying to key in on the run game. They got better throughout the season on the run game part. Like, they weren't letting the yards go quite as many as they used to. But it's that being said, they still needed some help, definitely, in the defensive line. And there's some good pieces out there for defensive linemen that are going to be available, probably. I mean, I'm just looking what I've got over on my side of the green gate. And yeah, I'm scared if some of those all of a sudden disappear. And Edmonton could be a very good option for some of those. So we'll see what happens there. And the other part is, Ed Hervey is a great general manager for finding American receivers. That being said, sometimes as Canadian receivers, I've seen some questionable picks. That being said, I think he could probably get a few good Canadian receivers that are available coming up here in free agency. Again, I know of a certain one that's a number 89 on my side that probably might be a free agent, and I would be fearing if he ends up with his old quarterback over in Edmonton. So, you know what? Honestly, there's some good receivers out there. Edmonton doesn't need a whole lot this time. They don't have to rebuild everything and go right from the scratch, which is great. Really, those are the two positions I can see that they really need to work on. Defensive line, maybe a little, you're right, also line, but in wide receiver and mainly in Canadian wide receiver, just to make sure that they can get that Canadian content. And you know what? That always opens up other things. Again, for another offensive lineman being American, it gives a whole lot of options. So that's the two parts that I see here, Ryan.
Yeah, I think for me the main one is receiver depth. Even though we talked about, in our unsung heroes, OJ Hillier and Arkel Smith being promising guys at receiver, and Smith's a free agent, Hillier is under contract, I believe. Maybe both those guys come back and they play a role in there, but I do think they need some more depth there, especially you're losing Curly Gittens Jr. potentially. Stephen Dunbar is a free agent. I know he was injured second half of the season. How is he coming back from injury? I think they need that true number one receiver. Like, you can't come out of next year with your top receiver finishing 20th in the CFL in receiving yards, regardless of the young pieces that are there and can grow. You need, I think, some of those steadfast players to exist in that role, because injuries are going to happen also, right? Like, if you're banking on these guys stepping up and taking the role next year, well, then what if they get injured? And then who's next in line after that? So that's the main area of focus for me. Also, I think quarterback position, Cody Fajardo re-sign. He's the starter coming into the next year. That's no question. We're all still watching what's going to happen to Trey Ford. He's due a roster or some sort of bonus on February 1st, I believe. There's the comments from Ed Hervey have kind of been like, was it from Ed Hervey or was it from Mark Killam? The comments of like, it might be best for him to move on elsewhere or something. I know I'm paraphrasing.
I was actually, it was Cody Fajardo, Ed Hervey, and Mark Killam that all said at some point on Garbage Bag Day, maybe a fresh start helps him.
Like, how do you come back from that?
They almost said they almost said all the exact same thing. Now the thing is where you can land on that is if you're not able to find a trade, right, which is kind of what we thought might happen. But you still have the conversation of, are you ready? Are you willing to renegotiate as a backup quarterback? Right. That's what the conversation is. But if it's like, no, I'm not ready to do that, well, then it could be a trade or it could just be a release. I mean, that's the thing. There's three options at this particular moment. It's re-sign as a backup quarterback at a backup quarterback rate. And here's what the expectation that goes along with that. Or, I will try and get a draft pick for you somewhere so that I have another Canadian. Right. And the problem is that the trading partners are becoming less and less. And that would be a difficult thing to be able to move. And then do they trust that who they have right now, these guys that are third string last year, can they be a second string right now? And if something happens to Cody, what happens? Or do they go after a guy like Taylor Powell, like you're talking about, right? So I'll be curious to see how that really plays out over the next little bit.
To me, you got to move. Like, after all of those comments and after, late in the season, I believe Trey Ford dropped a third on the depth chart behind Cole Snyder, even at one point late in the season as well. Like, didn't play a single snap after he got pulled in week 5, I believe, onwards. Like, to me, when the season's out of reach at the end, if you're not giving him opportunities, then you're saying that. Like, to me, for a young guy who's trying to build his confidence, I feel like that's a tough situation to repair and say, you know what, we're going to restructure the contract, but come back in training camp this year and we'll see how things go. I do see them parting ways. I think it's going to be tough to get a trade partner, as you said, because everybody's just going to wait till they cut them, basically, if they don't. Yep. And then they'll go and enter the sweepstakes. I don't think anybody's clamoring necessarily based off of what we saw from him this year. I think he has the tools in the right system to potentially grow into a quarterback. There's lots of playing career ahead of him. I mean, look at Cody Fajardo, who replaced him. He took a long time to move into that starter role as well. So I'm always rooting for the best for Trey Ford, but I think for the Elks, I do think based on everything that's been said so far, I can see them moving on, and that's why quarterback is also position of focus for me in free agency, because I think you need to bring somebody in there, and you can't trust on any of the 9 teams in this league that your quarterback is going to play all season, because it's most often not going to happen.
Yeah, no, and I wouldn't disagree with you at all. I do think they move on from him. I was feeling that in October when we were talking to the team. I was kind of surprised it hadn't happened yet, and then at the GM meetings or the CFL meetings, it's like, well, we'll start talking with him, and I'm like, really? Okay. But I think that there's also there's the team building aspect of that, of, okay, well, how does this work money wise, and maybe there is also a like, this is what it's going to be worth. Like, do you want this or do you not? Right. And I don't know. I think there's always that that kind of gut check moment of what do you want to bring to this team? And maybe some of those comments were, like, hey, I need you to show up to these other things. And maybe he wasn't. I'm making stuff up, but maybe that's the case. And this is the wake up call, right? So who knows? It's always funny because we only get the one side of the story from each person, but we never really get this is what the conversation was behind the closed door. Yeah.
Adam, any additional thoughts from you on that one before we wrap up?
No, I think you guys both nailed it right away. I just don't see a trading partner for Trey Ford. I'm sure that the contract is mostly based like a starter money, and there's no team that's going to probably hand that kind of money out that I can see. Again, he realized that it's probably where I need to take a team off the bench and win a game, and then move on from there, right? He needs that team that has maybe a quarterback that's prone or not probably going to make a full 18 games is where he needs to go. It could be Edmonton. I mean, you never know which quarterback's going to be the one to go out, but he needs that opportunity still. I think he's still probably, I don't want it, doesn't deserve it. He still should get an opportunity. He's a Canadian. I really like to see a Canadian quarterback succeed in the league. But
I think I know one that is.
We have one. Yeah, we have one.
I've heard of one.
Yeah, fair enough.
He belongs in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, fair enough. But I wouldn't mind seeing another Canadian quarterback receive. Yeah, okay, with the Hall of Fame stuff. Yeah.
The other side of that is, and I do want to, I guess I need to put this a little bit on record too, is that it was, I'm not saying that Trey wasn't was given the proper way to flourish when he was drafted, right? Sure. And maybe part of that rolls into a fresh start could help, right? Because this is what he's only known. So that's not a slag on Trey at all. That's just there's a lot of questions on how he was handled to start. And I don't know if that's probably both the team, the former people who were running the team's fault and a bit of Trey's fault too. But did that get better this season or not? And that's probably where we find ourselves at this particular moment.
Yeah, I imagine it doesn't help your development a ton to sit on the bench for the first half of the season and then come in and play your way into what should be a starting role, and then come back the next year and nope, you're not the starter, and then you watch the team lose, and then you play your way into a starting role, and then you finally get the starting role, and that's quite the roller coaster to start.
And then you get like, it's that's the thing, right? It was, if they were going to give him the keys, then they had to be like, okay, you have it, then that we got to just let you run, and they did that to start. And then I think whatever happened, I don't know what that was, but whatever happened, at some point Mark Killam was like, nope, I need a leader. And that's when the switch happened. So,
and pretty daunting to have a guy like Fajardo behind you on the depth chart breathing down your neck also when you start struggling early in the season. But
I guess, but I think we can all say, just from our own outside interactions and now my direct interactions with Cody, is that he's a good dude.
Oh, for sure.
So I don't know how much it was breathing on his back as much as it is here. I'm trying to help you to be better, right? So, but you're right. Like he was, the Grey Cup MOP 2 years before, and the other year was well on his way to be an MOP again. So, interesting to see how that will play out now that he's the starter, and what happens with Trey. But my guess is that they will move on. I just don't know who's going to be coming in as that backup quarterback.
That remains to be seen. We're about a month away, I believe, from CFL free agency kicking off. We got a lot of offseason here to come. We say goodbye to the 2025 Edmonton Elks. Goodbye, good riddance to that season, and onwards and upwards for the team. We'll see how the rest of the offseason goes for them into the season. That's it for our 2025 Elks deep dive. What's up next on the podcast? Stay tuned. Hoping to fit more of these deep dives in. I believe we've got the Bombers, Argos, Red Blacks, and Stamps still to go. Trying to schedule those all in with some guests over the next little while. So stay tuned for that. You can follow us on social media at CF Countdown Pod on X or Blue Sky, or Facebook.com/CF Countdown Pod as well to learn when these episodes will be coming out. You can also join our Discord community. The link is in the episode description there. That's where you can get notice of that and join us for all the other fun conversation in between. Check out all the other great shows from around the Canadian Football Podcast Network at CF Pod Network on X, the Alternative Football Network at the official AFN on X, or alternativefootballnetwork.com. Andrew, it's been so fun having you join us here for, I think you continue the streak of at least the annual visit to the podcast. We get you here at least once a year, and it's always enjoyable to have you. Where can people find everything else you've got going on?
Well, thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate you inviting me back, much less having me back on. That's, that's the important part. It's always great to chat football with you guys. I love your insights and love what you do with the podcast. So, our podcast, like I said, we're ramping back up for a January 27th relaunch into season 12 of the Turf District podcast, and we will go every 2 weeks until the training camp starts, and then we'll get to our weekly episodes as we do. But make sure you're joining us not only for football chat, but for our most popular new segment, First Down This Beer, where Linda gives us all of her wonderful beer suggestions, and it's amazing. And I can't imagine, I've found some really good ones this year just through that. So join us for all the fun and games. You can follow us at the Turf District on all of the different social medias, and if you want to follow my stuff, you can find me at Free Policious. But thanks again, guys. Always a blast.
Thanks again for coming, and sorry for keeping you longer than we had hoped, but
hey,
I think we all knew that was coming.
We did pretty well, though. I mean, we did pretty well, all things considered.
We're getting there, yeah.
That's pretty good.
It's still not an hour and a half, which is normally our average when Adam and I are on a podcast together. So speaking of Adam, where can people find you?
Well, first of all, I got to know, are they going to sample old style Pilsner during this beer in?
No, not old. I mean, she has brought a Pilsner on before, but not the not the one that's just called Pilsner. Like, it's a Pilsner type of beer that's made by an actual brewery. That's the difference. But yes, she brings many different kinds of. The best part with Linda is she's a playwright. So when she gets ready for the segment, all of the beers that she has, it usually is like, well, I think the Elks need, and then whatever the name of the beer is heart and soul. This beer is this type of thing, and so it's always a blast. And I know she has had Pilsner, but not the one that you're thinking of, because that's not allowed on our podcast. I don't know if you know that or not. That's shouldn't be allowed at all, is my opinion, but that's just me. Yeah, anyway. Yeah.
Well, don't worry. In Manitoba, apparently it isn't. But hey, what do you do? Anyways, if you're looking for me, you can find me at Adam Stewart 1. Mostly right now for me, a lot of stuff is senior hockey, because I mean that's a big thing here, and where I am, provincials are just about to start. We're in senior A this year. Unfortunately, we lined up against our friends to the northwest of us, which is the Foam Lake Flyers. Yay. Anyways, yeah, that's mainly what I'm up to. But hey, if you're looking for good information on the CFL, every time I see something either from 3 Down Nation, or I see something from the teams, or I see something from the CFL, I try to share it over on our Discord channel. So if you're looking for kind of information about generally what's going on in the CFL right now, there's always, there's always at least a post a day for me there, because there's always something going on. There's always somebody signed with one of the 9 teams, or there's something going on at all times. Make sure you follow us on the Discord channel. That's probably the best way of getting your CFL fix from me and from the rest of us probably as well. Other than that, yeah, you can find me at Adam Stewart 1 if you want to follow more of the senior hockey stuff and probably watch me lose even more hair as the Theodore Buffaloes continue their run.
Well, as the unofficial, official Canadian football podcast of the Theodore Buffaloes, we wish you the best of luck. Go Buffs. I'm on X and Blue Sky at Cooper Trooper 42. Follow at your own boredom. Not much going on there, but you can if you want to increase your following count. There you go. Yeah, whatever podcast platform you're listening on, we appreciate if you do all the fun things such as like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, share the show with your friends, help us grow the show. We always appreciate that. 2026 is upon us. We've got a lot of fun stuff planned for this year. Stay tuned for more. On behalf of Adam and special guest Andrew, I'm Ryan saying thank you for listening. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.